Well, hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So finally we have Photon and Vox balance update. Long coming, and the TLDR version of this is very simple. Neither Photon or Vox is getting adjusted at all, and we have a new champion buff, Luke Cage. A full rework for Luke Cage is underway. Additionally, all the new champion buffs or reworks will also be subject to rebalance. As in, Luke Cage is going to get full-on rework, and then 6 months down the line, we're going to wait a balance update for him also. Right, so let's break down the post and see what Kabam exactly says about these champions. Balance team here again with an update to the latest round of champions up for review, Photon and Vox. Photon has immediately made her impact felt on the Bal realm. She was aimed at being one of the toughest Balgrounds and ward defenders that needed a hard counter. She did this by revisiting the ability to turn off decks, much like Heimdall, Domino, Void, and Jabari, while also adding some modern twists alongside defense. Photon was also aimed at being a strong attacker, countering a lot of meta-mystic threats with her neutralize immunity and Sunder debuff. Looking at her data, she has clearly hit these goals. Because of that, Photon will be staying as is. So here we go. Photon is safe. Now, honestly, Photon is currently one of the toughest champions to go up against without like Mantis specifically. There are obviously ways and people are getting better at fighting her, but comparatively speaking to the rest of the champions that are released as solid defenders, Photon is one of the tougher ones to counter, for sure. Arguably, well, I placed Photon at the top champion spot in 2023 champion releases, and I thought if there is a champion that will get a tune down, it would be Photon, which, was not a guarantee by any means, but I would not have been surprised if she did get tuned down slightly on defense. Now, this news will definitely come like as a mixed feelings for many. I know that there's going to be a ton of people who already have ranked Photon, love their Photon, think Photon is perfect the way she is, and I'm fine with that as well. And there will be quite a few people who are irritated that she will be remaining as she is because she's wrecking everybody left, right, and center in Battlegrounds. I'm sure that over time we will get more and more hard counters for Photon. It's going to alleviate the situation, as well as we ourselves are going to get better at fighting Photon, which always happens when the champions have been in the contest for a longer period of time. Ultimately, though, still think Photon is an insanely powerful champion, and here we are. She's not changed. Now, Vox is a bit different situation, where I have heard most people would have liked Vox with a slight tune-up, or most specifically perhaps not take the damage when the buffs get nullified. But let's see what happens. Vox will also see no changes. They targeted dealing high versatile damage that was easy to access, while still making room for skill expression to allow masterful players to take them into more matchups and squeeze out more damage. Vox's success against both tech matchups that highly highlight utility like Omega Sentinel, but also in more general tough defender matchups like Thing, indicate Vox has all the tools at the right strength in long-term viability. Now, we'll see about that. Ultimately, let's face it, Vox is not a bad champion at all, but he hasn't had the biggest impact on the game. I know that there are tons of people who love their Voxes, and that's fair enough. Who doesn't like the Mr. Edgelord with tons of degen? But when it comes to his top tier popularity, he's solid. He's fine. Again, I know some people would have loved to see him get a bit more love from Kabam, but I don't think anybody is going to be outraged about the fact that Vox isn't getting a tune-up, unlike some other champions released earlier this year. But let's see. Let's move on. We know that we have a champion coming up who has to get to tune-up. I swear, that's like the biggest point. Wait, is it next month when we find out whether the lady is getting tuned up? I accidentally switched on my city. Right. So that's happening with Vox and Photon. What's next? With both champions needing no changes, we're happy to share that Luke Cage is getting moderate rework. Timeline will look January plus February beta builds and March full release with changes. And let's speak a bit about Luke Cage because he's a champion that already has gotten a buff, by the way. Initial version of Luke Cage was significantly worse. Luke Cage did get his buff together with Red Hulk, if I recall, and that was very, very, very early on in overall lifespan of the game. Ultimately, I like a ton of things that Luke Cage does have in his kit. With his indestructibility, I like the fact that he synergizes with any debuffs on opponent that grant him more attack, and Luke Cage still is one of the best options for some specific science nodes as well, with his exhaustion and also reducing opponent's power gain. He was one of the OG hype counters, by the way. And it is, however, undeniable that, he has lost that. He just does not have quite enough damage. Ironically, I think he would be perfectly viable champion today if he just had significantly higher rate of applying exhaustions, which some of his synergies provide. But I don't think he would require too much changes. He would pretty much be a champion that I'd say like value update would probably make him a very, very good champion. Or maybe like a tiny little tweak to his stun mechanic, give him something similar, like give him a nice stun lock, like OG Hulk. That'd be awesome. But yeah, Luke Cage, I think, just give him more exhaustions, and he'll be perfectly viable champion with his massive concussion, whilst also reducing opponent's power gain at a time, and then potentially stun looping, putting more debuffs on opponent, having more damage, maybe give him slightly more damage increase per debuff. I think he would genuinely smash, so I'm very, very excited to see Luke Cage rework or moderate buff. On a similar note about Luke Cage is by far and away one of the favorite champions for one specific, extremely dear moderator of mine. So I'm sure that she's going to be ecstatic hearing that Luke Cage is getting a buff. She's watching right now. Huge shout out to her. She is the head honcho moderator on the channel, and I couldn't be doing this without her. I haven't been seeing quite as much of her recently. I think she's been quite busy, but one of the best human beings you can meet online. So, on the final note, starting with Luke Cage, updates to all champions will also include a follow-up review to make sure they are having the intended impact. For example, if we update an older champion's damage target, we want the opportunity to identify whether they're hitting the target and to adjust it if needed. Just like new champions, this allows us to make sure the best version of that champion arrives in the contest. Badass mother flippers. Or alternatively, this is to prevent another juggernaut from happening. I'm kidding. I mean, this kind of makes sense, right? Because, plenty of these tune-ups that they're doing, they're just not mattering. Like, a lot of these champions get tuned up, whether even be that these new champion tune-ups or even older ones, they just don't really matter. And it's kind of like an annoying, empty feeling. I think recently we have, gotten a few champions that do in fact do better, but they're typically like more moderate or complete overhauls. With these smaller updates, yeah, I do think I agree. Overall, again, this whole balance program thing, I'm still not a big fan of it. Still introduces a lot of uncertainty. I think we haven't had necessarily the best results from it as well so far. If you look at 2023 champions, them not touching Kindred, for instance, when to me it is obvious that he should have been tuned up. And similar to Moondragon, or perhaps, Lady Deathstrike could have used a bit of love. I don't think Sandman's tune-up really made a difference if you liked him before. Like him now, he didn't go from being underwhelming to being good or decent, right? Okay, we have had some bit better ones, like with Shocker, perhaps Wave, but I think it's very safe to say that when it comes to balance program, there have been really some baffling decisions not to touch champions at all. Some weird tune downs as well, and some less than effective tune ups. And when it comes to old champions being buffed, it's kind of a heavy topic still, because this year we basically had like a stint of 6 months, 7 months with no champions getting touched at all, which was extremely frustrating. That's why I'm quite happy to see that at least some champions are getting tune-ups or reworks now, like with Red Skull or Luke Cage now, and I'm sure there were a few more on the way. But still, I just really miss the old buff program. I'm not gonna lie. I think they could have carried it on for another year or so. Give us another 30, 20, 30 cool champion buffs. Because there's plenty of champions in the contest that are completely outdated. But, not my decision to make. Let me know what you guys think overall about everything. Photon not getting touched, Vox not getting touched, Luke Cage buff, everything else. And I'm going to catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about